Hello to everyone watching on YouTube and listening on Spotify. It's another episode of NRG Insights, where I speak to people across the mortgage industry, whether that be lending, broking, or everything in between. Just useful people to know, influential people in the industry, and people who I always think can really kind of add value to other people's careers. You've had a really positive trajectory throughout your career, and that is down to the way you've led yourself, right? So I'm interested in that. What you think has been the difference maker?
Yeah, there's no work version of myself. The version I am at work is the version I am at home.
Yeah,
it's the version I am when I finally get to see my mates for a pint. I'm the same. It's the authenticity has always been a big thing for me.
Yeah.
And you see people, there's no point reading 1 Minute Manager and the Monkey and then completely transforming your management style and your leadership style. Or who moved my ice and cheese? Right, I'm going to be like that guy in the book. It's about being authentic and sometimes not be afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Own a mistake. The amount of times I dwell more on the mistakes than I do on the successes, which is why this bit of conversation is probably a bit difficult. But
yeah,
it's just own it, because you can't redo it, can you? You've just got to take it in.
Yeah.
And at the back of it, there's always got to be, I've still got to think back to 2001, when I first started on the phones. What was I looking for when I first started out? What was helping me? Is it the person how did people interact?
Yeah.
And then watching leaders above you and around you, I think I wouldn't do that.
I was going to say, do you think it was born from great leaders, or do you think it's born from the ones that are a little bit shit and you try not to emulate them when you grow, or is it kind of a mix of the two?
I think it's a mix of the two. I've worked for some fantastic leaders in our industry, and what they've been able to do is give me a viewpoint of what good looks like. And I've worked for some poor ones, and they've been able to give me a viewpoint of what not to do. And I think it's about mashing those two together. But it's about being authentic to myself, and then realising that what lights my fire doesn't light your fire, and what lights your fire doesn't light the person next to you. So you've got to be authentic. You've got to be personalised. Leadership is key.
Let's touch on that personalised leadership, right? Because it's tough, right? Because we all want to be Alex Ferguson, right? Where everyone, when he trains everyone differently, he speaks to everyone differently. But realistically, you've got a big team.
Yeah.
You physically don't have the time to look after everyone individually and treat everyone individually. How do you build that? You still got to keep everyone as one as a manager, but you've also got to add that kind of personal touch to everyone. How hard is that, or how do you go about it? Just even on a time issue, but also just maintaining the business pro quo is tough.
Well, maybe that's one of the quirks that I've got, is I have got a decent memory.
Yeah.
And I do like to talk to people. The best part of your day as a leader, when you're in the office, is the good morning check. Make sure, I sort of sit near the door. Everyone who comes in, it's good morning by name. And you can see the way that someone walks in tells you, are they carrying a bit of baggage into work?
Yeah.
Are they carrying a bit of success into work? And sometimes that might navigate to think, I need to catch up with that person, X, Y, Z. But, and that's one thing. Trying to remember everything about everyone is difficult. So what you've got to do is share a bit about yourself.
Yeah.
You've got to share a bit about yourself. You've got to make sure that people know that what your family situation is, what you like, what you don't like. And let them also talk to you and have a bit of personalised interaction, because try to sort of fencing yourself off from a team. I mean, I don't overshare with anyone. I'm quite a private person, but I do share about me, what does light my fire, what don't I like, all that kind of stuff. And if you do that, you're enabling people to come and talk to you as well.
Do you think that's part of the talent of the leadership, is that breaking down the barrier of not having that? Well, the barrier between management and not is that they can come to you as a person, if you like, rather than just a boss.
Yeah, but listen, leadership's two things, isn't it? It's a set of tasks, and that's your management. And as long as everyone's clear, there's a job description, and I am responsible for this set of tasks, you're responsible for that set of tasks. Don't confuse that with how I should interact with you, how I should carry myself, how I should be in a meeting. That's me.
Yeah.
And that's me. So getting me away from the tasks. A job description is all they find. I am no better than the person who's just started in our business.
more recently, when you surround yourself with some exceptionally skilled people, whether it's our CFO or treasurer or Jamie or anyone within the business, and you look at their skill sets and think, yeah, you know what, they can do a better job than I can at those things.
Yeah.
And then for running the business going forward, as we do scale, certain traits that I have might not be suitable for, growing a £1 billion plus loan book business. And that might be my, entrepreneurial side, which is I'm very impulsive. I'll see something and I'll do it. The way my mind works, being I'm heavily dyslexic. I'm not using that as an excuse to how it works, but I jump around and my mind's like, right, let's do that, and let's launch that product. But the reality is it's not that simple anymore. We can't just go out and go, right, launch the product next week or do that, which is why I like investing in other businesses and, being a non-exec on a few of the things that I do.
Your brain busy, so Glenn Hook stays on.
So Glenn Hook's there, then I've got all the little like fun, quick wins here. But no, I will at some point move aside and bring in a chief executive who will take it to that next level, and I'll step to chairman. And my good friend Michael Dean at Avamore did a very similar thing. He stepped aside, focusing on other things, and that's working well.
Dimitri's coming on the podcast actually as one of the
he's a good lad.
Things. But Mike's taking non-exec side of things now, only chairman, and then away from that side of things.
And I think that works well.
How do you think you'll cope with it? I know we're miles away. We're not miles away, but I know because someone else running the business that you set up as a two-man band, it must be quite hard to stomach. Or do you just see it as a machine now that is?
Yeah, I think the question is when is that point going to happen? And for me, it's not now. It's probably not this year, or that's in 2024. It's probably going to be the year after that, I would have thought. Once we've entered the buy-to-let space, the loan book's heading towards 750-ish. To me, it feels like that's a nice time to move to a role where I can still have strategic input. I can still help with the day-to-day, but it'll be more of a, executive chair or something, and almost hand the baby over a little bit for that next portion of growth. Because I know my skill sets. I'd love to sit around and grow it all the way. But if I can see someone who can come in and be a real firework and deliver even more exceptional growth, then we'll bring them in. And certainly there's some amazing people in the sector that I look at and go, I'd love you to run the business and take it from 750 mil up to 3 billion and then a trade sale into one of the banks or whatever. But when that day comes, I'm not exactly sure yet, because I still love it. I still love the day-to-day. I love the people, love the story.
Stuff, isn't it? I was speaking to someone recently who's recently stepped down and they've gone into a chairman type position, and they were saying that it's because something happened that was quite important and they didn't really care. Because it's the day-to-day stuff, and they're not really involved in that anymore. It didn't really get them out of bed anymore. And so that's a great time to move over and let someone else in who was actually already running, the operational side of the business, and just get them to do that role. I think that's a good point.
No, exactly. And I do miss the stuff we did in the early days. Like we had loads of desks and chairs delivered the other day, and got my toolkit out and started building it. And everyone's coming into the office going, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I actually just quite enjoy building stuff. And I did it on the first day. I'll still do it now. And I don't know whether that's something in my mind about, I've got a huge love of Lego and building things. I just like building things.
Giant Lego.
Yeah. And when it gets to a certain point, like a big Lego set, you want someone else to take it over.
Yeah. How easy is it, or how hard is it to kind of separate yourselves from the crowd?
It is hard because, I don't know if anyone has a true USP, because you will hear of, we've got the best service, we're the quickest, we'll offer the most leverage.
That's what Briggs is.
Exactly. So it's very, very hard. So this is where that relationship piece really, really does come into play.
Yeah.
I think we are quick, and we do offer good leverage. So we have we offer good service too. So, but I don't think any bridging lender is going to sit in front of you and say they don't do that, are they? So, it's just important, again, I think it comes down to brand awareness, so people know where you are, how they can interact with you. When they interact with you, they know what they're going to get. They know they can have a full and frank and honest discussion, and they'll get an honest answer, a quick no, or how can we do this, or what do we need to do to make this happen. Yeah. So it all comes down to relationships and expertise ultimately at the end of the day.
I suppose, and the underwriting side of things, like you said then, if it's a how do we do this as opposed to no we don't.
Yeah, I've always done that. We can't do that, but what we can do is this.
Underwriting, right, Jaxon? Did I say any of that? Has that helped you? Because I suppose 100%. A lot of people who've come from underwriting into a sales role
Yeah.
Because you've got that sales patter about you, but actually that technical knowledge is something that, it makes you an authority, not just someone likes.
Oh, it's helped me hugely, and even more recently, I've been writing credit papers and training others to write credit papers in the development space as well, and that has helped me kind of pull back on my underwriting days as well, because it was some time ago. But yeah, having that insider knowledge, how a deal works, what the process looks like, why we're asking for the things we're asking for, all the third parties that get involved, why they're involved, what are they going to do. Yeah, I mean, you can't undervalue that experience at all. And for me, when I talk about upskilling my teams, I want them to be fully aware of valuers, surveyors, solicitors, processes, fees, understanding questions they're going to ask. There is. I mean, it's hard because a salesman is not an underwriter, or salesperson is not an underwriter. An underwriter is not a salesperson.
If you do like the behavioural type stuff between underwriting and sales, they're very different normally.
Yeah. I think the skill sets are very different.
I think it's hard to find. I mean, we speak to underwriters that want to become BDMs.
There's some work going on here. Sorry.
Next door, they want to be BDMs, and it's quite hard for them to get into that side of the market, because I don't think they're considered maybe salesy enough. I think So
yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to give them a go, because I think their skill set is huge. But being able to sit at your desk and analyse a paper or an application is one skill. Standing up in front of 150 brokers doing a presentation is a very, very different skill.
There is a train of thought, that the harder you work, the luckier you get, and I do actually believe there is some truth to that. So, I mean, one of the things I've always tried to do is work harder than my peers or other people around me. I do think that if I look back at my going way back when, maybe my educational background coming out of school as I did with not a lot, probably kicked me on to work a bit harder than most. So almost from day one, I was always striving to see what does that next promotion look like? What do the people look like who are doing that? How do I better them? And generally it is a lot of hard work. And sometimes I think
were you always that way inclined as well? Were you always looking at the next thing, or were you?
Yeah, I was. I remember when I was talking about this with my wife the other day, but when I was 18, I remember coming out and going, right, I had a feeling I'm going to prove a point. I felt a bit, let's just say, underwhelmed with how well I hadn't done at school. And it did put maybe a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, certainly in my early part of my career. And then that kind of kicked me on, and there's been a couple of moments where I feel I've really progressed very quickly, but there's also been some times when I've plateaued. And I think one of the things I've learned is to listen to feedback a lot more. I think that one of the things about sometimes having a bit of a chip and I'm the best, I'm gonna show you.
I'll show you.
Actually, it can make you somewhat blinded to other people giving you feedback. And it's taken a couple of times, been a couple of people in my career where I've had some rejection, and whereas my initial reaction might have been to be they're wrong, of course, that actually when I've sat back and reflected, it sounds really cliche and cheesy, but it's true. I've tried to learn from that. I mean, the other thing
we talked about this the other day, that listening is a really tough skill, especially for those driven people that are very focused. And the same as receiving feedback. I think it's something you learn. I mean, did you just get better at it, or is it something that you consciously saw going, do you just get wiser as you get older, or is it something that you've consciously worked on?
I saw it as I went along, and it's one of the things that, again, this was fortunate. There were a couple of people in my early career who gave me because actually giving feedback is actually a really difficult thing to do as well. And I think that people don't always recognize that when someone gives you some tough feedback, actually it's been quite, unless they're completely cold, it's been quite a hard thing for them to do. And there were a couple of times where I remember one in particular incident. This is quite early on. I got turned over or looked over for a promotion, and somebody got it that in my mind, the kind of this cocky little upstart wasn't as good as me. And I was what is this? And it took me about a week, and then I remember sitting back and going to speak to the person that had turned me down, and they said, well, these are the reasons why. And I kind of ate some humble pie at that point, and learned from it, and actually I saw what the progression happened.
Could you see it when they explained it, or was it still a bit like, I'm not sure about?
No, I had to maybe force myself to see it. So, being honest, in my core, I was still like, well, no, I still think you've got this.
I bet, yeah.
You've got this
well, that's
wrong.
why you go for these promotions, right? You're in it. You don't think because you're second best.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that sometimes, if you say things out loud or you go for a promotion, it doesn't always happen there and then. But what you do is you start to put, you put yourself on someone's radar. And if you look at, maybe our industry is a good example of it. So many people similar age-ish to me, similar experience, who've kind of taken that step up. And undoubtedly, there would have come a point where they've applied for a promotion, they got turned down. And actually, they probably applied for, and I have done this before, applied for promotions that deep down I knew I wasn't ready for. But I think that if you put yourself into that position, sows the seed. And actually, when a year later or 6 months later, even something else happens, something else comes available that wasn't necessarily there to start with. That's when it then comes together.
How do you stay on top of your game? How do you? Because when you started, there's probably, other people fighting for the business. Now you've got 240 bridging lenders, for instance, who are nipping at all the big guys, and everyone's trying to nick a bit of your pie, as it were. How do you stay in front of that, stay on top of your game? How do you keep that level of being at the top so long?
Yeah, well, I mean, I can tell you what it's not about. It's not about chasing the price down to offer the cheapest pricing in the entire market.
Yeah.
Because we pick up on a load of bridges that have embarked on that journey with another lender, and they've not been able to deliver, and it gets switched over to us, and we get it over the line. I think it's that continual innovation, continually checking yourself, understanding the market sentiment and the direction that the market's moving in. And all of our field-based BDMs collate feedback on the market every week on competitor changes and appetite. And trends and demands. So there's that side of it.
Because it would be relatively easy to be complacent, right? You're a big business. You've got lots of brokers. People come to you. They know they can rely on you. But it would be relatively easy to fall into that complacency.
There's never a sniff of complacency together. It's a very hungry business. I suppose the other big thing is the relationship side of things. That's the second piece. Mark being Mark, he speaks to 3 brokers every single day. How many CEOs do that? He speaks to 3 of his customers every day.
Really?
Hopefully he'll hear the same feedback that me and my team hear when we're out and about. But people value that access to senior people and senior people getting involved to get stuff done when it needs to get done.
That kind of invokes a bit of moaning because you get the chance to speak to someone. So if you've got any problem at all, then I suppose that's where you get better, right? I suppose the more challenging feedback.
And Mark will challenge us on things. Mark will send us press articles in the morning saying, "What about this?"
What's my name on it?
So that's great. There's no room for complacency, which is good. It keeps us all moving forward.
Do you think do you think that's a trickle-down leadership thing as well? Whereas Mark's still hungry, and it shows in the business.
Yeah. I mean, someone said to me once, like the team forms the attitude of its leader. And that's definitely the case at Together. And the other thing is process as well. That's the other key. So if you look at bridging in particular, for example, the process with other lenders can let them down. Particularly the legals.
Do you think that's a time in the game thing, that slick process, or do you think that's just being so aware of what's important on the customer?
It's both. We know what works. We've got in-house lawyers, but we'll allow things like dual legal representation as well. So our model, we've got great AVM criteria as well, which is valuation bypass, which a lot of the small and new entrant lenders, their funded vehicles don't allow for that. and that is very often the deciding factor, because the client's got to have time off work, surveyor's got to be booked in.
Yeah.
There's no guarantees when the surveyor gets in there. It's the surveyor's attitude, but that working with AVMs has been great.
Yeah,
across all products, but bridging in particular.
Lenders bringing it into the market, and I don't obviously from the outside, but that does make a huge difference, right? If you can get a decision, so much quicker than anyone else. There is a problem with people thinking they're the finished article. I think happens quite a lot. When you've been around a bit, you've got a good name. I think, like you just said, then you're very big on always learning. I think that's really relevant. But purpose-wise, what do you think people have to think about when they're kind of moving into next roles, or when they're thinking about the next step? Because you've mentioned it, but just kind of...
I think if it's right for them, I talked to a really good recruiter years ago about, who was consulting more than recruiting for me, he did a lot of recruitment for me back in Precise. So I used to say to him, how do you know when you've gone too far? As in, you've taken a role that's way too big for you. Yeah. And we used to sort of talk about and do a simple exercise of a piece of paper, what you like about your current role, what you feel that you can actually do more, and what you feel those roles are for the next part, and just break down and sort of rate them how you rate yourself at the moment. I used to do this thing, and this is the bit. One of my ex-managers got me totally, where, you get a new role, let's say, and he rung me up about the new role, and he said, and everyone else was congratulating me because, they were congratulating me, seeing that new title. And he rung up and he goes, you're probably feeling bad today, aren't you? Because he got me. Totally. Yeah. I said, yeah, totally feeling bad today because he got me. And the justification of that is why I felt bad is that I measured it like a video game, that in the role I was in at the moment, I was at, 90 odd %. Yeah. I thought I was 90%. I'd seen it all before, those bits, questions I knew how to answer. So as soon as I go into that next role, it's leveling up. And I felt I was at 0. So quickly, I had to get myself better in that. So that would mean a lot more hard work, a lot more hours that nobody saw, the swan effect, all those things, so I could learn it and felt justified to be in that role because someone had entrusted me to do the next stage of that.
So I think this market this year, whilst there'll be a lot of competition, will be better than it was last year for a number of reasons. As I said, rates coming down are automatically a kind of good sign to get the market functioning in volume and transactions and people making decisions. So I think
we'll have a good run at it. Because everyone says, I think I can't remember what it was there. Michael Allison was saying at Roma, he said there will be a bump in the road again. So and I said, what about just a good year's run?
I've been in this market 25 years. I think probably 24 of them I've seen bumps in the road. And that's what makes it interesting. That's why brokers or the intermediary add value to their clients. That's why lenders like us prosper, because we're able to adapt and support people during
that was kind of the conversation we had. That was the kind of the conversation we had in that if you're really good at what you do, a tight market gets rid of a bit of driftwood. With the greatest respect, you know what I mean? It does, but you don't lose the top 20% of your team, do you? Yeah. And it also sharpens up our tools for when the market gets better. So, if you're okay, like when the market's easy, it's easy for everyone, right? Yeah. So everyone, it's hard to grab a market share when the market's going like that because everyone's doing it. Everyone's just doing it. But actually, this was a challenging time, but a time for everyone to kind of dig in and get a bigger piece of the pie, right?
Yeah, look, there'll always be winners and losers. It's a bit like football, isn't it? As we talked about earlier, you want to be in the winning camp, and certainly that's where we want to be. So I think we're well established, we're sizable, we're scalable, and most of all, I think we've got fantastic people that work here that are out in the field supporting the brokers that we deal with the corporate accounts that we deal with. And equally as important, we've got a great back office team, the heroes sort of behind the scenes that underwrite the deals. And, the guys we've got in our proposition team, they're always looking at gaps in the market.